Hello everyone, I should probably point out the elephant in the room. A massive thank you to the reception on my Junji Ito video. It's like the highest performing video I've ever done in my the channels I've ever dabbled with. And like the feedback, the comments, like you're all just so nice and it's like actually mind-blowing. So genuinely thank you so much. I want to continue to do stuff like this because this is like the area I sort of enjoy, and it's like I'm having fun making this type of content, so that's like the best thing for me. And if you guys like it, then brilliant, because yeah, it's great. So again, thank you so much and enjoy the video. So when I'm doing some tedious work, I'll usually put something on in the background to kind of occupy myself, and so I was browsing Netflix a little while ago and this popped up. So for those who don't know, this is Goro Miyazaki's latest film, Earwig and the Witch, released in 2018. And notice that surname, Miyazaki. See, when we think of the name Miyazaki, a few pretty images spring to mind. So, what happened here? Now when I actually mention Ghibli, I want to point out that there's other contributors. It's not just the Miyazaki bloodline, there's also other founders involved and other directors, such as Hiromasa Yonebayashi. I don't know if I said that right, this is going to be a tough video to do. Or the great Isao Takahata, who of course made Grave of the Fireflies, Princess Kaguya and many other works, and he sadly passed away in 2018. Unrelated to Earwig and the Witch, I'm sure. However, in this video, I'm going to be referring more to the works of Miyazaki. Who knew? So, I mentioned before in my videos that I'm actually a filmmaker, it's kind of my occupation. I've made documentaries, fiction films, etc. And so, of course, my opinion is valid, and nobody can challenge my opinion. That's how life works. And having said that, and using my analytical knowledge I've built up over these years, I can gladly say that Earwig and the Witch is actually fine. No, it's not great, is it? It's not great. But what stands out most, of course, is how it looks. Now, if you examine closely, there's something slightly different about this film in comparison to other Ghibli films. That's right, of course, it was produced by NHK. No, of course, it's the animation style, which is just beautiful. I mean, wow. So, of course, this begs the question, why did this happen? Why was this allowed, and why is my hairline receding? Disney! Disney is actually quite a small startup company. You might not know about them, or maybe even heard of them, but in Japan they actually have quite a large presence. From animation to Marvel and pretty much everything. I mean, look, come on, Disney owns like the world at this point. Goro at the time was trying to simulate what was done so well by Disney and other 3D animation studios, because that was, in 2018, the normality, and it still is. At this point, it's like Goro's trying to be a certain YouTuber or TikToker who's trying to jump on a trend. You know, he's trying to jump out of his dad's shoes, make his own original voice, shoot for the stars, and crash land. This was the studio's first time at doing 3D animation, and it's kind of a topic in itself whether or not 3D should be the universal style for animation. I know it is the normalised sense now, but things are slightly changing. But as you can see, there are techniques and practical applications which are extremely difficult to replicate from a company which just hasn't had all that much experience with working with 3D animation. In fact, this was their first 3D film. It's difficult to replicate from a company like Disney, who have access to some of the best 3D artists in the world, and so I would have thought there would have been some kind of networking where if you're going to distribute a certain product of film, then okay, we can bring in a certain level of artistry in order to produce a product that, you know, is going to do well. It's a little bit like in my Junji Ito video where I mentioned the cave analogy, which of course states a shadow is just a lesser form of that which is more real. And I think Goro slightly rejected the traditional Ghibli style and the 2D and slash 3D animation that Ghibli utilises in order to adopt something that they just weren't ready to adopt. So why was this done? Well, the popularity of Disney, especially in Japan, alongside other studios, seems to have made the 3D animation style the bog standard technique for storytelling nowadays. But honestly, there could have been a lot of logistical reasons too, such as time. I mean, bringing in a less experienced director than his dad honestly means they could risk using a different style of art form as opposed to traditional 2D animation, which would take a whole lot more longer to produce for Ghibli standards. Going back to authorship, there is a genuine danger in actually swaying away from identity. What made Studio Ghibli so good was the timelessness provided by its traditional 2D animation and how it's presented to us, alongside innovative and mesmerising stories which I'd argue no one can really replicate. When you look at this, you know Hayao Miyazaki made it. When you look at this, you know Hayao Miyazaki smoked it. There is historical value and beauty in everything Hayao and the team at Ghibli makes. Each frame is a literal painting. Unfortunately, outside of the film realm, Hayao's relationship to others has always been quite temperamental. He even expressed in Ponyo an apology to Goro due to the backlash of Tales of the Earthsea, which is a film Goro actually stepped in to direct. I mean, only working as a landscaper and having no director's experience, like, at all, naturally led to something which wasn't really considered a Hayao Miyazaki Ghibli level. And I think making an apology about being the worst dad ever in his own film really speaks a lot about their sort of relationship and how Goro may actually approach filmmaking. And of course, after this, Goro was given the opportunity to direct his own work, and he made From Up on Poppy Hill, which Hayao helped write, and that actually was pretty damn solid. It was good. And of course, from there, Goro went to this. Yeah, look, Goro actually does have potential. He just needs more time and experience to polish his craft. But the fact that he's still connected to Studio Ghibli and genuinely has the determination to keep making films is the main aspect, and I actually want him to keep going. The main problem which Studio Ghibli seems to be facing at the moment is profit. We were actually led to believe that the studio would shut down in 2014 because it just wasn't turning a profit, as opposed to 3D animated films distributed by you-know-who. And I'll provide a new take. I don't think the problem lies with how the film is shown, what style it's in. I think it's just all down to how it's distributed. I mean, you can see the resurgence of 2D animation because of the accessibility. Check out Hell of a Boss, amazing series. Cyberpunk Edgerunners, amazing series. Very different series, but it still adopts the same visual style, and it's fantastic because it's accessible. And I think this is why we're starting to see a lot of Ghibli classics show up on Netflix, because streaming platforms are the new and convenient way of digesting media. It's interesting because Ghibli actually turned down a deal with Disney to distribute... That's a lot of Ds. What? I didn't clock that when I wrote that, oh my god, okay. They turned down a distribution deal on Disney Plus because Hayao was actually opposed to having his work be put on streaming platforms, and I kind of get it. Like, imagine being Hayao or, any director who's working with an animation team, and you're working so hard on a film that you'd love to be presented to the big screen, because a lot of films just don't hit the same unless they are on the big screen, only for you to get just shunned onto a streaming platform and not even get a cinematic release. I think that's messed up, and so I kind of get it. Like, who wants to work so hard on a project and not get a proper release? But clearly Miyazaki did have to bite the bullet because it's now on Netflix. So what's next for Studio Ghibli as a whole? Well, nothing. I mean, Boro the Caterpillar was the last thing that got released in 2018, and that was a little short film Hayao made. Hayao has retired, and with Goro we haven't had much information on his endeavours, so we don't really know what he's up to. It just feels as though Studio Ghibli has kind of fizzled out. The soul of the studio is just gone. What was once a place to tell heartfelt stories is now just an empty shell of its former self.
Oh my.
Yeah, no, this man just doesn't fucking die. Hayao Miyazaki will be coming out of retirement, returning with How Do You Live? Based on a 1937 novel by Yoshino Genzaburo. Is that right? Like, I did say my pronunciation was... yeah. It follows a 15-year-old boy named Junichi Honda, nicknamed Kobaru, and his uncle as the youth deals with spiritual growth, poverty, and the overall experience as human beings. I mean, if this doesn't sound like a Ghibli film, I don't know what does, to be honest. It sounds great. I just don't think people have clocked how important this film is going to be. Let's just put it into perspective. You are Miyazaki. You made a plethora of some of the greatest, most prolific, engaging, touching... I just can't use any more words to describe this man. No, as an artist, a storyteller, you are the OG, the top G. mastermind of the operation who has pioneered animation and how it can be used within storytelling. A literal legend. Now imagine getting quite old, which Hayao is. I mean, he's 81, but he's still making films. It's unbelievable. But at that age, at that experience, I imagine you'd want to savour the sweetest things until the very end of your career, right? I hate to think like this, but this may well be Hayao's last film, and I don't want that to be the case, but it's absolutely a possibility. But I feel as though, taken from a story that impacted him so much as a child, alongside the climate of his family and how his demeanour has just been so public to us, it seems like he really might open himself up in this film. May seem like a pessimistic man who tries to escape into his own beautiful worlds, may really try to give us a full showing of how he wants us to see him, or rather, how he truly perceives life under his chain-smoking exterior. See, it's this. To me, this is what makes Studio Ghibli so amazing. It's not just some corporate studio or distributor just trying to make money and trying to make, I'm sorry, just crap. This is storytelling with intent. This is a documentary. All of these films are a documentary, a journal of a man trying to express his emotions. And it's how he's revealed it to us within his works. It's how he's shown us the things that are in his mind and the stories he really wants to tell and how he perceives life to be. You know, how he wishes the world was as opposed to, unfortunately, what it is. And How Do You Live might just be the climax of everything we've seen. So what is going on with Studio Ghibli? Well, things are going to change. The end of an era might be on the horizon, and whether it's Goro or other creatives and directors collaborating with such a fantastic crew, I hope they work in order to encapsulate what makes the Studio Ghibli stories so beautiful in the first place. Thank you so much for watching this video. Do subscribe if you're new. I love making this stuff, and I hope you enjoy it as well. Of course, all comments, feedback are deeply appreciated. I will answer all of you. So, yeah. Take care.